they just tell interesting things that they're
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily hiding, but I just didn't ask, but they're
Yeah.
willing to share. And I guess a recurring theme is that people have made it's very hard. There's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain in their journeys. But what they do is they keep persevering and they keep remaining hopeful and they keep trying to, improve. And another thing is these people are no really different than you. I think this is like I shaked hands with a billionaire once. He was just a normal guy. I mean, I asked him how he did all this, and he just said, I just worked. He just did. And there's another guy I met, and he owned this massive building, and there was this massive venue, and he was just there. So I just came up and talked to him. And that venue is like $20,000 per day rent, right?
Oh.
And I was asking him how he did. He just said he just worked hard. Like I think everyone it's just like you do stuff and you keep pushing your outside. It's just one step in front of the other, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like the biggest themes. One step another. There's a lot of difficulties, but you have to just keep going through it.
Before we dive into today's episode, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us grow and inspire more people on their journeys. Thank you.
Hello, Elim. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas. It's my biggest pleasure to be on the show.
So, Elim, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm currently building EventBird. I host a podcast called recently changed to Unicorn Talks, where we interview founders who have been a part of or have built or invested in unicorn companies. And is two co-hosts, both of us trying to build unicorn companies and documenting our journey and giving questions related to the early stages of entrepreneurship. And I'm currently 17 and I reside in South Korea. Originally, I'm from Kyrgyzstan, a country in Central Asia. And I think that's a pretty good summary of what I do.
Mm-hmm. That sounds cool. I will be excited to find out more about your podcast and the startup. But firstly, can we start with your background? I think I've never met actually anyone from Kyrgyzstan, although you said that you moved from there in a young age. But can you tell us more about living there or growing up there?
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan. I came to Korea when I was 1, but I went there every summer break. And Kyrgyzstan is south of Kazakhstan and it's like east of China. So it's in between, think of like in between China and Russia and like Iran. That area is where I reside. The culture is very unique. I think everyone who's listening should go visit there or Kazakhstan, which is basically our brother. And yeah, I guess the background there is I have a lot of cousins back home, and I think something interesting. It's not interesting. It's a little sad, but down south is where I'm from, and there was a conflict there with Tajikistan, which is a neighboring country. They actually bombed like a part of my hometown. Luckily, everyone I know is safe. Not a lot of casualties, but that I think is an interesting note because that kind of shaped a lot. And going there is very different. Like South Korea, Seoul is one of the most expensive cities to live in. It's a very rich place, a lot of tech companies there. And if you go back to Bishkek, there is no skyscrapers, the capital city of our country. And I'm from a hometown, a small town. And in there, it's like when you go to the bathroom, there is no bathroom inside your house. You have to go outside of the house, walk out, and then walk for like through all the cows and chickens and then through some of the wheats. And then there's this toilet, and then it's not really a toilet. There's like a hole on the ground, and then you put wooden planks on top, and then there's like a little hut around it. And I think I'd especially be scared when I was like young, because when it was like 3 a.m. and I need to take a piss, I walked outside and it was pitch dark. I had to turn on the lights, bugs flying in. I went inside the hut, and sometimes I would see a lizard, which would be cool. And the worst would be when there's a bee or like a big spider, right? But there's always it's like a different kind of environment. So I guess that's like pretty good. But it's also a very beautiful country. I ride horses there, see the mountains. It's like a really nice place in that way.
But it sounds like a total opposite of Seoul. Rich, advanced economy compared to something like this.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually completely opposite. South Korea looks very nice, but one of the issues is like literally like I just went to a cafe today and I saw these grandmas, really old people, picking up like tons of like paper trashes, from the streets. And it's like they're really and right next to me, Seoul Station, there's a lot of homeless people. There's these little like rooms, like kind of like kind of like cages in like Hong Kong, what you call like really small, and people barely make any money. So that's an issue right now. So it's not totally different for most people.
And what actually was the reason for moving specifically to South Korea or Seoul?
My parents they came to here because there's better opportunities, and our parents luckily had the chance to move, with career stuff, and yeah, so I came here when I was 1, and that was primarily the reason because there were from Kyrgyzstan or Central Asia, it's really hard to go to like Europe and stuff. It's usually the easiest to get into like China or Japan or Korea, and
Mhm.
we just chose Korea.
And do you speak the language from
Yes,
Kyrgyzstan? Oh, oh. So you speak three languages, or even more?
yes, 3. I was supposed to know Russian because after the Russian colonization of our country and Soviet Union, everyone speaks Russian. Like my cousins can't speak Kyrgyz.
Is it
Most of them
how
can't.
similar is it with Kyrgyz?
It's not at all.
Oh, really?
It's like totally different. Our language is more similar to Turkish, although it's still hard to understand. But it's called the Turkic language. It's completely separate from Russian language,
Mhm.
but it's kind of merged. So I know some Russian because of Soviet Union, and
Yeah.
also you need to learn Russian if you wanna, unless you're going outside into the China or into the West. If you want to do business in Kyrgyzstan, you need to know very fluent Russian.
Yeah. So, what was it like growing up in South Korea?
It was very interesting because like I went to Korean school and I also went to private schools, English private schools. So I didn't really have the full Korean experience, but I just remember things changing a lot. And most of my childhood, I remember I lived in Itaewon, which is like the foreigner district of South Korea. It's right next to the U.S. military base. So I was
Oh,
kind of used to being with foreigners. And South Korea, I mean, it's
and
very comfortable.
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but near to foreigners, does it mean Americans or people from anywhere?
A lot of Americans, I guess. There were a lot of Indians. There's a lot of people from Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Germany. So a bunch of different, but mostly Americans as well,
Mhm.
I'd say. I guess like just adding on South Korea. It's very comfortable. Like I am not used to like the dangers of other countries. Like right now in the coffee shop, I put my phone, I put my computer out. I could sometimes I sometimes put my wallet out, which I stopped doing, but I used to, and I would just go to the bathroom. In other countries, I heard you get it stolen. In South Korea,
Yeah,
that's
I
not
would
the
never do
case.
that.
Yeah, in South Korea, it's never happened to anyone I know, so it just feels
Mm,
super comfortable.
mm,
And I mean, because of the safety, my parents allowed me to go to conferences when I was like 11, go to like electronic markets, go to like a lot of different places when I was very young, and
mhm.
do it on my own. And like I like my parents let me come home at 1 a.m. once because I went to this one business VIP something I went there, and they let me come at 1 a.m., which I don't know why. I would not let my kids do that, but they let me because
Yeah.
of the safety of Korea. So I
Mhm,
guess that's like what it enables. That was like I guess the most unique thing about it.
mhm. And can I ask you, because you mentioned that you lived close to the borders of North Korea, if I'm not mistaken. Although I
Yeah.
don't, although I don't want to discuss the politics and the relationship between the countries, did you feel, maybe a bit unsafe because of the relationship between the countries, or did it influence you in
Yeah,
any way?
yeah, definitely, definitely. I remember actually in this room once there was this alarm going on, and there was this loud alarm, and on my phone it was saying basically it didn't say start evacuating. Its phrasing was really weird, but it was saying North Korea sent something.
Hmm.
And basically you have to prepare to evacuate, not to evacuate. So I was kind of confused. My dad was like, "Oh, we don't need to." My dad, but I was like with my sister, we were both like yelling. We're like, "This actually could be something. We need to go." So my dad drove a car and we tried to go to a bunker. Turns out North Korea sent satellite. It didn't end up going. It burned. But that gave me like a scar. So whenever I hear sounds
Hmm.
like that sound like the alarm, I get really like anxious and I really need to know what's happening. And until it happens, I can't really stop.
Hmm.
And we live very close to the border, to basically the most authoritarian regime I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
right now at the moment. So it's been like crazy the fact like how developed this country is, and just up north is the worst regime in the world.
yeah.
And
I
it's always
agree.
a part of your mind, It's always it exists, but most people kind of like dissolve it, like kick it out of their mind.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I don't know what I think maybe I don't think they'll shoot, but if they shoot, I know I have no chance. Like the bunkers are too far away, and the atomic bombs are so powerful, and Seoul is such a condensed. It's big, but it's also quite condensed. And
Hmm.
we're you know in Seoul, I live near the city hall. Like most people live near the city hall or Gangnam. And the city hall, there is the president's house. He moved a little south, but like it's really close to basically where everyone lives. So that place is definitely gonna get targeted. So I'll get erased, sadly, if it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious, for example, when you said that you receive notification on your phone, how frequently does that happen?
You get it once a day, not about the atomic bomb. It's not like a loud one. There's a louder one that always happens, but there's like a more quieter one, which is like if someone goes missing or like if there's an earthquake. But usually the earthquakes are never in Seoul. It's like down south, and they're like very slow magnitude. So it's
Mhm.
usually like not really important things for you. Um,
Is that something that every citizen has in their phone, or you need to
I think
download
if you
something?
have no, it just automatically sends a message, but like alarm message. So you receive it even if it's like do not disturb. I think you
Mhm.
need Wi-Fi or something on. I'm not sure. Actually, you might not, but yeah.
That's interesting. Do you or can you notice that the situation is maybe getting more tense because of what's been happening recently with North Korea? Because I remember there were some tensions because they sent some, how do
Ah,
I
yes,
say
balloons. There were
it?
balloons sent south from North Korea because I think South Korea also sent balloons with like DVDs of like something. I'm not exactly sure about the specifics. All I know is the conflict is getting a little stronger. There's some big protests happening. Not massive, but I don't know.
But
I'm not really
yeah,
clear with the politics.
but it's not something that would, influence your life.
Probably will. I don't want to live Korea long term. I want to move my family to somewhere a little safer and more. I mean, Korea's
Oh,
safe, but it's just there's always the threat of Kim Jong Un. Or I'm not really worried that much. I mean, it doesn't seem like I've grown up with him always existing. He doesn't seem like he's actually going to shoot. But I'm just worried about their her his sister or his
mhm.
daughter because they must not have grown up in normal like they
So
might be
someone
if they're
else
willing
who
to.
replaces
Yeah,
him, what is it going to be like?
yeah, if they're more crazier than him, then I'm a little worried. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I try to avoid thinking about it.
Yeah, of course, I understand. It's not a pleasant topic. So then, coming back to you growing up, you said I was actually about to ask because of your English, it sounds like a native. So you said that you studied in a private English school,
Yes, yeah, most of my life. Yeah.
and is that something that is more frequent for students in Seoul, or why were you actually studying in English one?
There's a lot of foreign international schools. It's meant for a lot of ambassadors' kids go there. A lot of foreigners go there, and it's a mandatory thing where either you're Korean and you lived in like America or somewhere foreign for more than 4 years, but it's like a designated like school that's called a foreign school.
Hmm.
And Korean school, they don't really you learn English, but you're not really fluent in it. But it's okay for normal conversations. Like not really okay, but it teaches you a little bit. So
Yes,
my
and
parents just sent because English is just really powerful. So
mhm. And I would be curious, in a regular Korean school, do you learn, besides English, any other foreign languages?
yes, beside English, I think maybe Chinese if you want it,
Hmm.
perhaps. But I'm not. I only went there for a year, and I don't remember really paying attention.
Okay, yeah.
So
And so then, with your education, what is it that you focused on? Your specialization. If you studied business
uh,
or something like that.
I'm in high school.
Oh, is your high school? High school.
Oh yeah, so I guess I'm 17. I'm next year. I'm going to college. Probably I'm gonna apply for computer science or like business probably.
But in high school, you also have specialization or not?
Ours is more American style, so you kind of can choose what you want. So I choose like physics or like mathematical courses, and like philosophy. I like those kind of things.
But then, as you mentioned, what is it that you are going to focus later on? Business?
I'm not really. I don't really want to go to college, but if I had to, yeah, business. Preferably computer science, but it's just really competitive, and I'm not like a coder. I can code, but it's not like my deepest interest. I like building groups of people. I like working with people. I like communicating. I like psychology, but psychology just doesn't translate as much.
Hmm.
I want to do that as a minor probably.
And if you continued studying, would it be still in Seoul, or would you go somewhere abroad?
Probably San Francisco, but I heard it's really good for tech, but I also heard the policies and like like everything is really bad and really good at the same spot. So maybe like Singapore as well. I've been thinking.
No.
Um,
It sounds
Singapore or
like
States.
exciting places, yeah.
Yeah. Just want to go to like hubs of like a lot of economical activity
Mhm.
and with like good regulations.
And what then are your plans for the future? If you go studying there, are you planning to start a business or something like that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my goal is I want to take a gap year, and from here till the end of the gap year, really just try to build. So I have EventBird, the unicorn. I'm and just try to scale it or sell it or build something where I can at least get to like 20K per month or something like that. Then I feel pretty comfortable not going to college, and I'm just not going to go to college and keep building and probably scale just bigger and bigger and live as a nomad, just traveling every 6 months to different countries. It's kind of like
Mm.
Pavel Durov.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting. So, do you want to introduce EventBird a bit more?
It's a recent thing, I guess, to kind of go back. Like, I'm not like a business like savant, but I built like before I was working on. I think the first thing I was doing was 3D printing. I tried to sell 3D printing parts at like 11. It was not really a business thing. I just liked making
From
stuff, and
11, whoa.
but then I didn't really do business for like 4 years. But then at 15, I tried doing web agency, and I got like a couple clients. It was really fun when I got my first money. It was really fun. It was like $300, really small, but
Mm.
I was super happy because I was 15 and it was raining and I got it. And afterwards I started to learn coding. Because I didn't like because there's so many startup ideas I wanted, but I always had to rely on someone else to build it, and I really don't like someone else telling me what to do.
Mhm.
Like it's just really annoying. So I want to learn how to actually build it and have more understanding. So I built like a little AI Chrome extension. It made a little bit of money. We had like a couple hundred users, or I forgot the exact number, but
Yeah,
and then
wow.
and then I worked on some other things. Those things really didn't work, and I've been really focusing on the podcast the last 3 months. But I think it's at a spot where I can kind of do it on the side now because I wanted to use the networking and meet cool people. That's my primarily goal. And later on, I want to scale it to something bigger where it could maybe be a full time thing like Chris Williamson, Modern Wisdom.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, it's talking with like investors. And investors and really cool founders because their advice means so much. And now I'm starting to build something again with all the advices I learned from them and all the network I've built over like the past year and really focus in the last 4 months.
Mhm.
Like I've gotten like crazy people as mentors and really cool people who I'm trying to follow their advice and I'm trying to implement it to my current thing, which is EventBird. I am still in the midst because I have I have like 3 ideas I really like, but they all have a little issue. But
Funding.
EventBird, huh?
Is it funding? Money as an
Pardon?
issue? You said
No, not funding.
no.
There's some people I could ask for funding. I'm not really sure if I want it to be mostly bootstrap, and I want to first build something and just at least find like some PMF. But right now, so EventBird, what I want it to be is in South Korea specifically, I I became a part of the startup ecosystem. Like I really know all the events here, but every single person I meet, I can connect. They usually don't know like half of the other startup community. So I help connect. I help connect a lot of people.
Mhm.
So with I was like, oh, this is the issue. Like people can't find events, and it's hard to stay notified. And I use Meetup, and Meetup is not really commonly used. It's used for a couple things, but it's not really used for business reasons. There's Eventbrite. There's only one business event on there, and I found it pretty hard to stay in track of all the things that are happening. So I was like, oh, I want to build like some kind of. Right now, it's just a very simple database of just all the events recently, and that's it. I want to build more things on top of that, and I don't like Eventbrite or Meetup. Meetup recently got acquired from someone I heard
Mhm.
by a large company, and they've been increasing the prices, and some users I talked to, which is a small amount, but they said it's been kind of getting shittier in that there's a lot of like it's a mixture and it's not really specific, and the meetups aren't as good quality. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's a problem. Eventbrite, not a lot of people use it in Korea, so I'm like, oh, maybe that's something I can fix. The other idea was something called AI for Founders. I organize like 3 small events, and I'm hoping to organize something really big soon with another person. But what it is I just want to build some platform or something where it helps founders utilize AI. That was first just for events where we had usually 20 to 30 people. I usually brought like one expert in some field, and he would kind of give a lecture on something, and then everyone would kind of network, but with the primarily focused of how are you implementing AI into your business, what has worked, what has not worked. And I learned a lot of interesting things about how AI is implemented. So that's kind of, I guess that's the gist of like all the business things I'm interested in.
Yeah, and with the EventBird, is it focused on businesses or entrepreneurs, or is it for events on all
No,
kinds?
so right now this is for business events only. I want to really be specific because all the kind of advice and I asked my mentor, he has like a really big startup, and basically it's like, oh, find a really specific problem, build a very simple MVP, iterate very quickly.
Mhm.
So it's very specific. It's business events in Seoul. Then I'm gonna maybe grow it to business events in Asia Pacific, or maybe
Well,
only Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul, because those are the networks I have, and Sydney.
well, that sounds awesome because such a uh, idea like you've got that helps you to connect with people and you become kind of a hub that knows everyone, connects people, which just sounds amazing for the future.
Yeah, I really enjoy the community aspect of things. Like, I'm not exactly sure what my unique skill set is, but one thing I know is I just at least like connecting people and meeting new people. That's like business and stuff is nice, but I want to use that network and just, have coffee chats. Conversations like this is part of why I live. So
Yeah. And is so also one of the hubs when it comes to businesses and maybe startup scene?
yes, I think it was ranked I think ranked number 7 or 8 in this one study for startups. It's really vague though. I don't agree with them, but I guess we're very good in that. There is there is some issues I heard with the people I talked to about the government, but there's a lot of startups happening and there's a lot of unicorn startups coming out of South Korea at the moment.
Yeah. And what is it actually that makes you excited when it comes to entrepreneurship? Because as you said, you started in young age, even when you were
Yeah.
11. Is it maybe because of your background or some influences?
Yeah. The 11 one was not really entrepreneurship. I was just like, I just read a book and it said like Elon Musk made money when he was young, and I'm like, okay, I need to make a little bit of money.
So
So I
what
was like,
book
okay, I'm
was
just gonna.
it? Was it actually
I
about
think
Elon?
Yeah, it was a biography. I read him and I read some other people. I watched a lot of like YouTube biographies of like Nikola Tesla, and I like to just I don't know. I just like to do a lot of random things, but
Mm-hmm.
I just figured like, okay, if I make a little bit of money now, it's gonna be good for my lore. Like when I get older, like, oh, okay, he did this, so I'm glad I did. I made like $50, but I lost $400. I was down actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But
but
priceless experience, I'm sure.
yeah, it was. It was. I mean, I basically just sold it to all my friends.
So what is it that fuels you now? Before it was maybe influence of book or something else, and
Yeah,
now what is it that makes you passionate or to continue?
I guess I like the most. I guess I like the freedom aspect, and I also like the influence I can have with it. I don't think I'm like doing it for fully just like helping people. I think a part of it is I don't think I'm a perfect person with perfect intentions, but one of it is just Kyrgyzstan. Like I see a lot of poverty. You know, further off family members, they don't live. They're not in poverty, but they don't live in the best financial situation. Like the bombing one my some my grandfather's brother's something. His house got bombed. It chipped slightly and it didn't explode. So I was very happy. Nothing really bad happened. But I remember recording a video of it, and I think that's a part of what drives me. Like it's just insane the amount of the difference in the world, and the opportunities you have. Like some farther family members, they're what they see the world as is just so much more different than how I see it. Like
Mm,
like being next to like founders who are worth like $250 million and interviewing these investors, like it's really fascinating because like it is doable, and I can talk with these people and I can learn from them, and I can literally have a coffee with them. They're willing to give me that time. They're willing to
mhm,
give me money for something, and I think that kind of changed the whole worldview. And because I have good education, my I have my parents are willing to help me out, and it's true that I made some money, and those things have allowed me the world is just so much more open, and I think the world is so much more possible. But the people back home, a lot of them don't see it. They live their worldview is very, very small, and I don't and it's like either be a farmer or go to college, and you know just like I think I want to open the worldview of what we're possible, not to just
mhm.
Kyrgyzstan, but just like most, like I think Nepal is good because I heard their government is willing and they're pretty open. But build a lot of educational institutions. I think that's one thing I'm really passionate about. The other thing is the freedom aspect of it. I really, because our family's doing pretty all right. I love us to be free because I don't like having points in our lives where it's very like, if this one or two things happen, it'll all crumble. I want a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more of like a solid foundation to have on. And I think some amount of wealth invested into things, I think that can give me that. And I love traveling. Like I haven't really traveled outside of South Korea and Kyrgyzstan much, but in South Korea, I would like, one thing I'd love to do, and I did a lot with my friends, is we would just get a bus and we just go somewhere random, far from Seoul, and then we just go to coffee shops, work, eat nice
Mm-hmm.
food, surf, and I just want to do that, like work, build, move, and
Yeah.
I also think it gives me mission.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to build something big. I don't know. I just want to build it. It's fun in and of itself to a certain extent. So I guess those are like three important reasons.
Yeah, I like it, and I feel like that's something I can relate to. For example, when you said in the beginning that you come from, or that you, uh, when you look at the situation in Kyrgyzstan compared to where we are now, that people have kind of a narrow view and you can see people living in different conditions. I live in London and I come from a different country as well, from a little village, and I can also see the difference that, like, for example, people that I meet now compared to people back at home, and even seeing the possibilities here. And when it comes to podcast and speaking with ambitious and just different people, for example, like with you now, I would never expect to connect with someone like that and speak. So just wanted to mention that that is something I can relate to.
I think
And
I
that,
think a lot of people can relate if they really, yeah. I think it's a lot of people. I think we kind of only see like the very like privileged people, and I think we forget that most of the people, like, a fascinating thing is I think you're top 1% if you make like $30,000 a year, right? 1%, and in like Western countries that's considered like, oh, like especially in like like in Korea that's like average wage, you know.
Are you looking to elevate your online presence? Check out Trailblazed, our digital marketing agency. Whether it's standing out on social media, crafting a stunning new website, or developing impactful visuals, Trailblazed has got your back. Visit trailblazed.digital and reach your online potential today.
yeah. And before you, or we mentioned Chris Williamson, and are there any other people that you follow and are inspiration for you?
Yes, I can give you like a 5-hour list because I listened to so much podcasts growing up and so many videos. I had
Give
so
us
many
some
heroes.
tips.
Give us some tips. I guess this is an interesting thing is Mark Manson.
Yeah, of course. The
I met
subtle
Mark
art.
Manson. He came to
Oh,
South
wow.
Korea and he had a meetup, and I went there and I literally had a conversation with him. I
Oh my
told him
God.
that I had this, book. I can actually, I guess I can quickly get the signed copy if it's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Is it subtle art or the other one?
Okay.
Yeah, I
so
will.
this is the book. But this is not the one I read. I read the, what was it? The first
The
one.
orange
This is
one.
the second one. Yeah, but anyhow, I had this book, and I the other book, I think I gave it away to someone, but it's
Oh,
for Elim.
that's so cool. I'm
Yeah, but
jealous.
I met him. Yeah, it's crazy when you meet your heroes, because he was the first self-improvement book I ever read in my life. It was what
And
changed a lot.
and I feel like he's such a cool, authentic, and nice guy. Because I listen to his podcast, I watch him on YouTube as well. It's just so funny, and of course I don't know him personally, but I've got the impression that he's just authentic. And if I met him on a street or somewhere, it would be the same nice, cool guy. Although
Yeah.
if you consider the success that he had with the book, or even I know he made a documentary, just
Yeah.
really cool.
I think he made like $20 million from one of his book launches. He's pretty wealthy, and meeting him, he is actually similar to what I expected him. I haven't read it was weird because I was so excited, so I kind of regret. Like, I wish I asked him more questions. Because I told him like this.
Yeah.
So it was like at a chicken place. So we ate the chicken. It was really good, and he was going around everyone, so it was very small, like, time you could have with him. So I just told him, hey, I had your book. This one, there's the orange one. And I remember I took it to school, and in school I knew that the teachers would get angry if I have the F word on here. So I basically took out the first cover of it so I could still read it in school. So I told him that story, and he was pretty amazed. And then I hugged him and I said, I'm really thankful. He was a lot taller than I thought. He looks smaller but he's actually pretty big. He's pretty built.
Mhm.
But afterwards they went to like what was it? Somewhere else, and it was getting pretty late, so I was like, oh, I gotta go. But until like that I think they were going to like a club afterwards, and I couldn't legally go. So while in that path, I was just talking with him for literally 20 minutes. I just talked with
Oh
him,
my God.
and it turns out we were on like a similar. Like I was asking what he listens to, what his plans are, and it was very interesting. And yeah, he seemed like what he sells himself as. So that was pretty cool.
That's
I
impressive
guess
and sounds like awesome experience. Yeah.
it is. It's crazy. I met some other heroes of mine, and it's like I didn't read my podcast heroes per se. I met another hero, but yeah. But the podcast of going back to how to take over the world, I love it. World class.
Oh yes,
Ben Wilson.
Yeah, sorry. Mhm.
He retweeted one of my posts. I was so happy because I basically tagged him because Speechify had, but how to take over the world is pretty good. Founders podcast, I love it. Lex Friedman.
With David Senra, founder?
Yes, David Senra, world class podcast. He's really good. I want to go to his founders retreat one day. I like Acquired as well. I don't listen to too much, but I listen to some of it. Lex Friedman is a classic,
isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a little too in depth to what I am looking for. I don't really know. But later on, I really want to build a company at that scale, and I want my podcast to be like that, very informative, but also and they have a really nice, relaxing tone and pace, which I'm trying to do because I end up talking too fast. But Lex Friedman, I love. There's also I don't listen to Joe Rogan, but I used to. There's actually I can just turn on my phone. I can show all the ones I listen to. I have My First Million. I love that podcast. There's also All In podcast. I sometimes listen to it. I listen to Noah Kagan. I listen to First Things First, Modern Wisdom, The Game, Diary of a CEO, the Iced Coffee Hour sometimes. Yeah, a bunch of podcasts. There's probably more. Tim Ferriss I sometimes listen to. Mr. Ballin also has a podcast. Danny Miranda. I just listen to a lot.
Yeah. Sounds great tips. I know the most of them. I like it as well. So I'm glad that I found someone that has similar interests. And when it comes to books, do you read books? And if so, can you share some maybe that were impactful for you or that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I guess so. The first is the Orange Mark Manson book. That was the first, I think, self-improvement book I remember reading. That's been really helpful because it basically told me because I struggled a lot when I was young, so it kind of gave me like I don't need to care about people's opinion that much, to a certain extent. So it gave me a little bit more confidence. I think what other books? I like my Art of Human Nature from Robert Greene. That was really impactful.
Yep.
It gave me a lens into a little bit more about human psychology. Atomic Habits is also good. It helped me build my first habits. It made me go to them in Asia more. The fundamental things I somewhat remember. I like history books. I like books with more stories. I don't read too much. Like now I just listen to podcasts. I also listen from Speechify. And Speechify, what was it? What else is there? I think I was reading to I like Elon Musk's biography from Walter Isaacson. That was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well.
Deep Work was also good. What else? What's the most impactful book?
Or if you cannot remember, that's cool. Shared some amazing tips.
Oh yeah, some amazing tips. Okay, another book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one thing I remember from that, and I think it's contributed to a lot of the networking I can do. I still am pretty bad at it. Like I don't implement all of them, but it's very concise things that you think is too simple, but they work. Like one is always smile. Smiling is always very helpful. Like I tend to not smile, but I'm very interested. But I try to. And the other thing is, always mention the other person's name. Like when I'm networking.
I was about to mention that one as well.
Yeah, because I haven't been implementing it. I'm sorry, Thomas.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I found it very impactful as well. And I remember how important it is to remember and mention people's names. So I try to keep that in mind. I'm not the best, but that's something I was about to mention once you said that. So those are amazing points.
I guess the biggest takeaway from that book, outside of those, is this quote. It's you'll win more friends if you're interested in other people than in 1 month than you will have in a year being interesting. And I think that gives a lot. Like I always used to just like whenever outreach and stuff, like when I boast a lot about things I've done, it's actually kind of less it's more pushy. And I found that the greatest mentors and the greatest people I have around me were just people who I was interested in. I asked them questions and they're very willing to. And that's why I do the podcast as well. because I also like asking
Yeah.
questions. But yeah.
It reminds me something I try to keep in mind, that to be interesting, you be interested, because people like it when you are interested in them, when you ask questions, and when they can talk about themselves. So there is a good reminder or mantra to maybe follow for some people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And one thing, I think this is from Law of Human Nature. There's this writer called Anton Chekhov. He was a famous playwright, and it was one of the biggest things. This is a quote I try to remind myself a lot. Is he grew up in a very difficult time. His father was an alcoholic, abusive. And then they basically ran away because they had debt, and then they basically left their son to basically almost die. And he basically had to work super hard, work as a tutor, almost starved to death multiple occasions. Usually his legs almost got frostbitten. It's a really bad neighborhood back then, and he managed to survive. And instead of blaming his parents for everything, I might be getting the story wrong, but instead of blaming his parents for everything, what he decided to do was understand where they came from. And he understood that his father, why he was so alcoholically abusive and why he was so mean. He started to understand his psyche. He understood that his father grew up in a generation of serfdom. Serfdom is basically like being a slave, right? Because of like financial, I think. And his father had like 6, 7, 8 generations were all serfs or something like that. And his father had to work so hard to break them out of that. And he originally wanted to be an artist, but because he had to pay for the serfdom, he built a grocery shop. He did a lot of boring things he never wanted to do. And there was a lot of inner resentment. And he understood, and he saw his father rather as the person who's doing all the evil, as a victim. And also his mother, he saw something similar like that, how she grew up. And what he did was he, figured everything out. He became a playwright as well. And he went back home to Moscow, where their family ran away from him too. Not ran away, but something like that. And what he did is he chose to take responsibility. And whenever his mother and his sister and his brothers were like, no, I'm not going to do it, he just took, he basically showed an example of what to do, to such a degree where their family started fixing themselves. And he would give books to his dysfunctional family, and they would have discussions at like Friday night for 6 hours about that book. He would make them do it. He would help, like he would manage the entire family, and he would be called by his family as like Papa Anton, Papa Anton, which is a very respectful tone, and it's usually something a father, I think, would get. And his quote and the idea he found at the end, which I try to live by, is, it's just work and love. You work hard and you love. And I tried to embody that, and that was a big thing I learned, where self-responsibility can change a lot of things around. I don't know to that extent, but yeah, I guess that's one of the things I really remember vividly.
Yeah, I like it. I haven't heard of it, to be honest, so that is something that I will check out afterwards. Sounds great. And it would be a shame not to discuss your podcast. Can you tell us more about the podcast? I know we discussed it a bit, but a little introduction, because before we dive deeper into it.
Sure. It's called Unicorn Talks. We changed it. It was called EventBird before, Elim Kalilov. All those names. I started 1.5 years ago. And I just started it because I was working for a startup community in South Korea. I was helping them, and one of the CEOs, one of the founders, I just was like, all right, can I interview you? I was just curious because I saw so many podcasts. Why couldn't I do it? So I got him on the podcast, and thankfully Google had this startup campus in South Korea where it was basically free to rent out a studio, and the studio was like $300,000. So very high quality gear. It seemed as if the universe was set for it to happen. So I rented it out.
You said for free.
Yes.
Oh my god!
No one really used it. I want to keep it a secret, but yeah, people don't really use it even if I tell them. I don't know why, but I went there and I did it, and then I started interviewing some people I met. Really chill, like once a month or something like that. But then last year, I started doing more online. I started really focusing on podcasting because it was something I resisted myself, because I wanted to focus on first developing that coding skill set. But I found that it's not like something I'm deeply into. I do like building things, but I don't like coding in and of itself. It's just a means to an end for me. So I focused on podcasting, and we were at like 45 episodes. And the current idea right now, which might change, is 2 founders who are building unicorn companies. My co-host, he's building a different company, And basically us in the attempt of building multi-billion-dollar companies, we share our weekly journeys of what we've been doing, and then we interview other people who have been a part of, invested in, founded really big companies, preferably to unicorn stage, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
And your co-founder, is that your friend or someone? I
Yeah,
don't know.
he's my best.
Yeah.
He's one of my best friends. He's basically, I think at 15, he helped me basically cure social anxiety. He pushed me, and he's, you know, when like Brian Chesky, he had this podcast and he was talking about how he never believed in himself that he could do anything. Like he could never even own like a restaurant. Like I never even believed like I could run a business that big. I never really thought I could be doing this at this age. And the friend, Burke, he really believed in me, and he said you can do it. And he made me go talk to strangers in Itaewon, which is the foreign district, and he made me do it. And he really believed in me, and I think that belief helped. And that's more about him. He's really cool. He got like his startup funded at 13. Now he has he's at and then he helped one startup. He was working for them, and they had an exit. So now he says he has an exit, so it's really cool. And now he's building a startup with a team. Yeah, it's really cool.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, he's really cool.
And you interview founders and business people. So how do you get them to speak with you?
Yeah, so my co-host has been helping a lot with more of the investors, but when I first got it, it was just through mutual connections, like people who I already knew, and I just asked them. And there's a Kakao group chat. The foreign community I work for, they manage that community chat. So I just reached out to people and I said like, hey, I work for this, and then they all knew that person, so it was a little easier. But even without that, people were just willing. And then I started like going up, and this year I really started focusing. So I started to reach out more people on LinkedIn is my primarily source. Twitter has also worked. I never really did email. I need to try to do email more, but primarily LinkedIn is what I've been doing. And some people reached out to me, and then I did the podcast because they reached out to me for them to be, because they knew I was young and they want to also meet me. So they were like, oh, podcast. And they seen there were founders as well. So I was like, wow. And one of them who reached out was like a really successful founder. So I was like, you're reaching out to me. That's really cool. So that's how I find most of my guests.
Why did he reach out? Did he want to share his experience, or?
We were in the same foreign group chat, and I think based on my conversations with him and another person, like who's through conversations with other people, I think people see something in you, like mentors. That's a part of why they do it, is they see something about you, and like my co-founder, my co-host Berg, I think he also said something similar, where someone reached out to him and they became a mentor when he was super young because they saw something in them, and I think that's primarily why they just saw something in me and they want to help out. They want to meet, and yeah.
And when it comes to the structure of your podcast, do you follow like a structure, or is it conversation, or what is it about?
Yeah, it's very right now I haven't chosen a specific type, but the general consensus is first question is something like, what do you do? Try to understand what you're doing. I used to go more in depth into their childhood, but I'm right now trying to turn more into business because I want it to really help my entrepreneurial thing so I can at least achieve freedom. So I've been directing it more towards that. The ending question is usually, and then the middle is just like things they've done, asking questions, not really structured. And at the end, usually I ask a question, something about their advice to young people like me, to young founders, or to just their own 17-year-old self. That's the structure I usually follow. And yeah, I think that's the structure as of right now.
When it comes to the strategy of the podcast, such as where to share it, what social media platforms do you use?
I use Twitter and LinkedIn to share. Today I was going to try out YouTube ads. So I'm going to pay like $9, which is super cheap, to promote one of my YouTube videos because one of my mentor was telling me to do it. But right now, primarily LinkedIn has been the primary source. But what it helps is that when I reach out to someone, I can tag all their companies and tag like their name. And what they would do is they would repost it, but their companies could also repost it. So they would repost it and I would get... So I think like average impression for each of them, or like 5,000 impressions on the podcast itself. The views are not as high, but it would allow me to be seen to a lot more people. And LinkedIn, a lot of people use it are like founders, right? Or people who are working for companies. So they're not like... And Twitter is also helpful. Depends on who the guest is and where they're more active. Because if they share it, their entire audience can see mine.
Yeah. That is smart. I
And
should focus on Twitter as well.
Twitter is less, I think. It depends on what you're trying to go for. I tried to follow Harry Stebbings. Harry Stebbings was a more business focused podcast. He started at 17 and 18, and I tried to follow his strategy of distribution, because he says you need to spend almost an equal amount of time in distribution as it is to create the content. Because like,
Mhm.
you put all that effort into creating something, but you don't spend time distributing it. It's like, he says that's like a
Hmm.
wasted effort in some way.
That is a good point. Something that I need to think about as well.
Yeah.
So, with your podcasting journey, what are some mistakes that you did before and maybe you wish you knew earlier?
Mistakes. I guess one mistake was I had this one podcast and I didn't pronounce his name right for like 5 times, and he's cool now. He likes all my podcasts. I'm really thankful. I'm gonna probably gift him something when I'm successful as like a sorry, but and like things were unprepared. I wasn't really clear about what we're trying to do if it's a video, and I still make the mistake sometimes of not being very clear with like what kind of podcast. Another mistake I made is there's this really one cool guy, and he was really interested in me, but I think my messages were too long. Like I wrote too much. Like I need to be more concise, so I've been trying to write more concise. That's
Mhm.
another thing. And during the conversation itself, I think one thing I make a lot of mistake is I really like listening to people's stories, so I let them talk. But some people, they talk like too long, so I need to be able to cut them right when
Yeah,
when it's not helpful, and try
in the
to
right spot.
yeah. I guess
Sorry,
those are the big ones.
I was laughing because I can relate to most of the points you said. Like I remember
definitely.
I pronounced someone's name wrong. Sometimes also let people speak in for too long. So it was just good to hear it from someone else as well.
Yeah. It's,
And where do you see the podcast evolving in upcoming years, or what are your ambitions and your plans?
sure. Our ambition is we want to basically network a lot of people. While we're young, I think we have a unique point of relationship with someone. Because right now we want to grow it to at least like 10,000 subscribers. I think this year goes like 3,000 subscribers. So we're going to work on distribution on that side. The year afterwards, when I basically graduate high school and start going to college, my goal is like 10, 30K subscribers. That's like the more like metric focused goals. And I want to, I think by September, I wanted to have 100 episodes recorded. We're on track to achieve that goal, and we want to really just interview a lot of cool people, and you know, I guess really build our network, really build relationships with these people, and
Mhm.
also have a large audience of maybe young founders and entrepreneurs who listen to us, because I think we can give a unique side of things. Because a lot of the podcasts or other seasoned veterans were just like asking them questions. I don't really like that, and I think there's a lot to be gained by having two people who are building while interviewing people who are also young. I think that can give a unique angle, because I think the world is changing so like I am quite scared in some ways, because technology is evolving. There's so much things happening. Global politics is changing, like a lot of things happening. So I want people's take on the future for us, not the current, because we can't really do much about or their past. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I'm thinking of at the moment.
Yeah,
And
sounds great.
also raise there's people who are helping me out, but like once a mentor of mine told me not to get investment right now, so I'm listening to what he's saying. So I'm not going to get investment right now, but I think after like 3,000 subscribers or some level, I'm gonna raise some money, or my startup makes more money. I think what probably will happen is my startup makes more money, and then using that money I can build my podcast, hire some editors.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Hopefully, we'll follow you and we'll follow similar strategy with my podcast and help to grow it. And with your guests, are they from South Korean scene or international?
A lot of them are international, so they're foreigners. But I used to do physical, and when I did physical, they were all in Korea because it's physical. But now we've gone more online, and most of our guests comes from actually surprisingly Singapore, Seoul, or San Francisco or New York.
Wow. So like literally the biggest hubs. What about the guests from London? Did you have any or plan to have any?
We have yeah, she's really cool. She had like a really big exit, and her podcast. She has a podcast as well, and what she says is she suffered from a 9-figure exit.
I will
So
need to
overall,
check her out. I'm curious.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, but hopefully we'll have her on, and I guess she's from London, if I'm correct. And who else was from London? I want to have Harry Stebbings one day.
Not
So
gonna lie, I don't know him.
Harry Stebbings is the host of 20VC, which is the biggest venture capitalist podcast. And the crazy
Okay.
thing is, he started at 18, right?
So you
And
are
he's
ahead.
based. Yeah, I guess, yeah. He was and what he did was he built a large network, and now he has $150 million fund that he had. So he didn't go to college, and he just became and he didn't build a really startup. He built a media company called 20VC, and he has had like 3,000 podcasts, like a crazy number. He is literally he's the best business podcaster in the world at the moment, if I'm correct. I actually interviewed the head of content.
I think I might have subscribed to his podcast, but I don't know his name. I'm ashamed, but I will do my homework.
Yeah, he's not well known for. I was surprised because I was talking with this one big venture capitalist. Like he's like the founder of the second biggest VC in South Korea. I was talking with him, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know it." So
Yeah.
but it's really popular in Europe.
And this is the question that actually someone asked me in one of the episodes that I recorded before, and I need to ask you. So, what is the recurring theme that you can see from the podcast that you did? Something that people you spoke with told you?
The recurring theme, I guess, just even going outside the podcast. After the podcast, I usually have a lunch or a dinner, or I have a conversation afterwards. And I think that is one of the reasons why I did podcasting, is I got to get a more insider look into how things are operating, how their lives are going, and it's a more realistic. Because on podcast, I can't be as truthful about everything. Like I try to, and I don't have things really high, but I think things I don't want to particularly share because everyone has made mistakes. No one's perfect, you know. So not even the podcast, just like networking and stuff. They just tell interesting things that they're not necessarily hiding, but I just didn't ask, you know. But they're willing to share. And I guess a recurring theme is that people have made it's very hard. There's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain in their journeys. But what they do is they keep persevering, and they keep remaining hopeful, and they keep trying to, improve. And another thing is these people are no really different than you. Like I think this is like I shaked hands with a billionaire once. Like he was just a normal guy. I mean, I asked him how he did all this because and he just said, I just worked. He just did. And like there's another guy I met, and he owned this massive building. And there was this massive venue, and he was just there. So I just came up and talked to him, and that venue is like $20,000 per day rent, right?
Oh.
And I was asking him how he did. He just said he just worked hard. Like I think everyone, like, it's just like you do stuff and you keep pushing your outside. It's just one step in front of the other, and that's like the biggest themes. One step another. There's a lot of difficulties, but you have to just keep going through it.
Yeah, love it. Sounds great. And as we will be finishing soon, do you want to promote yourself, the podcast, or where people can follow you?
Sure. Yeah. So my podcast, it should be. I mean, by the time you publish it, the name should be changed because the name isn't changing in 14 days. But it's called Unicorn Talks. Or you can just search up Elim Kalilov Unicorn Talks. I'm assuming, Thomas, you could put it on your description, so you'll probably have the links. LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. That's where I'm most active. So I guess that'll be the best place to reach out. And the
Make sure to
EventBird
subscribe and follow.
Yes, exactly. Subscribe, follow, and comment. And if you want to have a chat, I think I have a Canly link on my LinkedIn. And if you're a founder, then I'd love to have a chat if you're interested. And EventBird is releasing. I'm supposed to release it's like a super bare bone MVP. Just release it today, so you can use it if you want.
Oh, really? Today?
Yeah, and it's very simple. Yeah, I mean, I chose to start working on like a week ago because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I want to build software again, and I've been thinking a lot about it. But I want to start also building something because I missed that part of it. Because podcasts, I keep talking and learning things, but I can't use it for anything. You know, that's one of my worries. Yeah. But yeah, so EventBird, it's just called Event. Actually, the link right now is not EventBird, but you can search up EventBird and you'll probably find it. But it's in beta, so I don't know if you can have access. But anyhow, EventBird, you'll one day probably see it. I also have AI for founders. If in LinkedIn, if you're in Seoul and if you want to come to AI meetup, it's there. I'm gonna probably host one this month. If you want to join, you can join as well. So that's a lot of things, but yeah.
Sounds awesome. Big plans. We wish you good luck, and I will make sure to share and support. And to finish up, have you got any final message or maybe a question that you wish I asked you and didn't ask?
I guess this is just a random rant, but I think this is the biggest life lesson I've learned, at least right now, is the fact that there's a bunch, but I think this is a very quote I've been thinking a lot about is, life is not about, it's a French quote, life is not about avoiding or running away from the storm, but it's about learning to dance with the rain, right? And that's a quote I think is very important because, growing up, I think, I escaped from a lot of things. Like I escaped from a lot of worries, a lot of insecurities, a lot of things I faced so much. Like I was not even 1% of the person I am, and I'm not that cool, and I'm not that like good. Like I'm not really much at the moment, but I was not even 1% like 5 years ago, and I could not have imagined I was here. And I think the one thing that gave me confidence to do a bit more and to push myself to a little bit more to do the things I did, and is like even when you feel like a failure, you just have to keep going. You just have to keep believing in yourself. You just have to, like, even if it doesn't make sense, you have to be delusional. You just have to believe in yourself that something good is going to come, because the moment you don't have, everything is over. And some days you're going to feel like everything is over, but you just have to push yourself back up and try it again, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck there for the rest of your life. And like I couldn't imagine that I could be able to talking to people in the podcast, that I would be able to go to a networking party and where actually the people there know me, and like I can actually talk with people. I never even thought, I was always scared of even talking to strangers. I was scared of talking to people in my school. I used to just hide and play video games. And like it's a very slow incremental steps. Like when I first like started talking, like just coming up to strangers, like it was so hard. I felt like I was gonna die. Like physically it felt horrible. But as I kept trying it, as I kept pushing myself, and it's like every single time I feel like I messed up. Like I went to this one conference, I felt like I was the most dumbest and insecure guy in that place. And like some people thought, they looked at me like I was stupid, and I felt like giving up. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna just try to practice talking. I was gonna practice pushing myself out there. And I think as I do that more and more, I like now I have mentors who are worth so much money, and like not even the money parts. Like I have cool people around me. I can talk with these people, and it's like that. And like Mark Manson and like other heroes of mine, I was able to reach out and connect with them. Shout out to David Park. He was a mentor, and I connected with him. He was a hero of mine.
What's his name again? David Park?
David Park. When I first built the AI Chrome extension, the entire startup strategy was basically around his startup, which is called Jenny.ai. And I think it's worth $30 million. And he's I met him physically, and like I asked him questions, and he's really helpful. He's a great guy, and I don't know.
I'll make sure to check him out.
Yeah, Natu is also great. He's also Natu. I think those are two really great people. And shout outs, I guess.
Yeah, it was a great message to finish with, if you agree. So we'd like to thank you for your time. Before,
I need to shout out just one more. Rizzo as well. Rizzo. In case you see Rizzo as well, I'm thankful for you. Rizzo and Jay. Yeah. I'm so thankful for your time, Thomas.
No worries. It was inspiring chat and big plans that you shared. I'm impressed by what you achieved and in such a young age. And I will make sure to keep following and supporting, and I wish you all the best.
You as well, Thomas. Your podcast, the most recent one was like a black belt jiu-jitsu and like MMA fighter. I like your stories. I think you're going to become, you already kind of look like Chris Williamson, so maybe the future Chris Williamson.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's nice to hear it, especially from someone that I feel like I can relate to, someone with experience from podcasting and someone ambitious. So I wish you the same, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for your time.
Thanks for listening to Produced by with Tomer. Check out show notes for all the links, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your feedback. Speak soon.